Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2019 AWS Public Sector Summit in Washington, D.C. I just have a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. My name is Shalisa Chambliss. I am your room host today. I want to remind everyone to make sure you've downloaded the AWS America's Events app. It is located in the App Store for iPhone users, and on Android is available via a web download. You can use the QR code just outside and to the left in order to get the app. Make sure you use it to build your schedule and also complete surveys for all the sessions that you attend during the summit. These sessions are being recorded, so at this time, please make sure to silence all of your devices. During our Q&A session, there will be a microphone located in the center of the room. Please use that microphone to ask your questions so that everyone can hear you clearly. This particular session is titled, We Power Tech, Engaging on Recruiting for Diversity and Inclusion. At this time, we're going to welcome Sasha Thompson to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing?
Great.
Good. So again, my name is Sasha Thompson. I'm the Inclusion Marketing Lead for Amazon Web Services and manage the We Power Tech program. We Power Tech is AWS's Diversity and Inclusion Outreach program. And the purpose of the program really is twofold. The first is to increase the number of underrepresented technologists in this space. And the second is to provide a platform for them to be seen and heard. And so we also are responsible for the diversity content that happens at these events. And so today I am thrilled to bring you a panel list, it's not really a panel, a group of speakers for this TED Talk style session today, these lightning talks, to talk about how to engage underrepresented technologists in different ways that they're doing that within their communities and partnering with public sector entities. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Robert, our first speaker.
Thank you, Sasha. Good afternoon. My name is Robert Holm. I'm the founder of On-Ramps to Careers, which is a business education public partnership located in the nation's capital here in Washington, D.C. So welcome to D.C. if you're not from here. I am joined with Chisholm Njoku, who is a high school senior for 4 more days. He is about to graduate and go on to Lafayette College. Got a full ride. He's a computer science student and going to pursue that. Yes. And has been an On-Ramps Careers intern for now, as this will be his 3rd year. I'm also joined by Diamond Green, who is at Harrisburg University of Science and Technology and has been 4 years as an On-Ramps intern since she was a junior in high school. They were both students in a program that I run at McKinley Technology High School, which is a NAF career academy, in addition to my role as the founder of On-Ramps to Careers. So when I was their age, and I had just graduated right after Diamond's age, I had already been in the Army and had a clear idea of what I wanted to do around economic development in particular. And my first job was at a wilderness camp, living in the desert in a teepee in Arizona with young people who were locked up, kids who have been from LA, San Diego, and Oakland, and they had chosen their path to economic prosperity, mainly gang and drug, the drug business, let's call it that. So the big takeaway that I got from that experience was that young people most want an exciting future. They want an opportunity to create something exciting for themselves. And young people in these communities, like all around the world, often don't have access to those communities, so they're going to try to create it however they can. Here in Washington, D.C., we have a problem that is, we have a couple of problems, but we have one that's evident all around the world, not just urban communities, rural communities like where I'm from originally. as well. But here's a map of DC on the right, and you'll see that the dark shaded areas, those are low income areas of high poverty concentration. Up in the upper left is northwest is high income, which is actually way higher than the average for the nation. And so we have this problem that everybody has, but really in a stark contrast here of income inequality and sort of lack of access to the communities that are shared. One of those shared communities is in this technology space that you guys are in. And it is a place for that kind of exciting opportunity. You guys live in it, and there are tons of young people who want to follow in your footsteps. So what OnRamps does is become a bridge between those two problems. We bring those together and help have them solve each other's problems in a way. The problem on this side being the lack of diverse workforce or lack of workforce, period. The top 10 occupations with greatest demand in this area, 4 of them are IT related, ones that are probably populated in this room, but top software developers. So the way we do that is partnering those two communities together through the schools in particular. We work with 12 schools, all of whom have computer science, networking, or digital media classes, and that's where we find the young people who are passionate about this. And we partner them with over 40 technology-related employers. Here's just a handful of them to give you a sense that it's private sector, public sector, nonprofit organizations, all of whom want to develop a diverse workforce for themselves. They also want to visibly make a change in the nation and in our country, and internships are a way to do that. So internships are perfect at this high school age because it's an inflection point for young people. These guys are probably, Chisholm in particular, probably tired of everybody saying, what are you doing next? Where are you going? But he's thinking about it all the time. Where is he going and what's he doing? And this is a spot where we can really make an influence, help them see what's possible. What can students do at a high school level? Well, if they've had, like Chisholm and Diamond and many hundreds and hundreds of others, about 1,000 right now in DC, but we're growing. If they've had computer science classes or digital media classes, they can do at Accenture. 15 of them are developing apps for Accenture clients. Some are developing game assets and video games themselves at video game developers. Girls Who Code, we're the biggest supplier of girls to that program, which gets young people, girls in particular, that access to coding. We have, you see on the screen, but I want to highlight one that's not up there, which is virtual enterprise architects using Amazon Web Services, the AWS cloud. Students are learning the AWS cloud and creating trainings for that company's employees. So those are some examples, but let me turn next to Diamond and Chisholm just to share a little bit about what were the internships that you worked in, and how did that impact the way you think about your future when you're in high school and perhaps now too? Diamond, you want to start?
Well, I worked with Microsoft. There, I was the marketing manager. I also had a game designer, game developer, and a team lead, and we worked together to create a game. It was like a Subway Surfer type game. But my job was to market the game. So I was in charge of social media, video blogs, posting on YouTube, regular blogs, website, things such as that. Then my second intern was with Homeland Security, TSA. There I worked on their database, basically changing people's status. So if somebody got promoted or somebody's a new supervisor, director, I was working behind the scenes of what people usually see and learning their database and their code to change their status online. I would say these internships helped me mature my teamwork, team skills, my organization skills, definitely my time management, and I would also say my intellectual skills.
Well, me per se, I've been a part of OnRamps for 2 years now. So I've been fortunate enough to work at the same company in Lion Inc. For the past 2 years, the first year, me and my team, we made a gamification app based on the past performances of the company, so we can bring in new contractors and new employees so they can be enlightened about what Lion does. The second year, we used the MySQL language, and we created a database system based on the employees and their credentials and information. So I was very fortunate to do that. And personally, what I took away from these experiences is one day I want to be able to aid to less unfortunate communities, both here and abroad, through the use of technology. So one day I want to be like a chief information officer of a big company such as like Deloitte or Cisco, you know. So yeah.
All right. So Chisholm and Diamond are a great example of the 525 internships that we've created in this region since 2013 when we started. And the growth I highlight because I love that we have the success, but there's lots of demand. And this year we're 122 internships. We also have another 30 or so students that we're partnering with Preschoolers, who you'll hear from in a moment, to do training in CompTIA certifications. So just like Diamond and Chisholm here, our students keep reporting the same feedback from the experience. Number one, being motivated to pursue a STEM field, and secondly, feeling like they really have the tools to do that. Internships give them not only the resumes to do it and the skills behind it, but the networks. The fact that we're sitting here in this room, these guys have a whole new world of networks. Hopefully you'll talk to them afterwards. Young people can get started even before college making these decisions, and really they are. And we need to get in there and make those changes, make those influences in the direction that we want. So I know that all of you in the room are thinking about how to get more diverse, inclusive environments. Is that true in your organization? How many people are trying to get more diversity in there? So we're doing this in Washington, D.C., but there is room around the country for it. And I feel like we've learned a few things in our 7 years of doing this. So number one, engage big institutions. Don't be shy about the big D.C. public schools, which has 11,000 high school students and many more overall. And schools, they are hard to change, but that's where you can get some scale. And secondly, you can do that, even though you can't make a big change in a high school, you can do it through one team at a time. So if you get a Diamond and a Chisholm, or 5 people in your organization, or 5 people at another 20 organizations, when these guys come back to their classrooms and their teacher, they say, oh, I better step up my game, because Diamond knows more than she did when she left last summer. And secondly, they say, wow, I could really influence their future too if I'm teaching them something really relevant, because they're going to go out and apply this work right away. And of course, they come out with the confidence that it's just hard to get when you're doing it in the classroom. Use intermediaries to accelerate your relationship with those institutions. It's a little self-serving, but On-Ramps is one of those. Preschoolers is another. The item, who you'll hear from in a moment, have relationships with the training institutions, with the schools, and with the employers. In some ways, we end up being a translator between those two. It also provides stability when a teacher leaves from computer science or an employee leaves from Accenture. Those intermediaries keep that pipeline growing. I think the most important thing about internships is that you take young people into your world. You don't have to learn something new. What you have to do is teach what you already know, which is the most valuable thing that you can provide. And so we try to make it easy for you to do that. Once they get in your space, and we certainly invite you into the schools as well, that's where the big magic happens. So maybe I'll have Chisholm and then Diamond talk about how those relationships, how they developed at the organizations, and what difference those made. Go ahead.
Oh, well, personally at Lion, I feel like it was home. You know, they really welcomed me in, even though I was like a stranger. And like one of the biggest things they were doing were like they asked about my personal life beyond the work settings. You know, they invited me and my peers to like outings with the whole office. So it just really created a bond outside of the office, and they wanted to know more of our personal life so they can like just mold us and groom us to be a wrecking force one day in the IT field. So yeah.
Right.
My experience was like his also. Who I worked for, it was a family. It was always a family environment because I had 3 internships with on-ramps, and each one it was like a family. My last one with TSA, I actually got to really get to know my director and my manager, who was also a female, which both of them, and I'm not used to working with females. Usually it's a lot of men in my field, and my previous managers have been men. So it was fun getting to learn from them, and they were kind of like mentors, and our communication was always there. I could ask them anything. They would help me network with someone in my field. So I'm in cybersecurity, so they would take me to the cybersecurity director in TSA, and I got to meet them, ask them questions, and it was just a family feel. I actually went fishing with one of my managers, and it was fun. Like usually you think, oh, I can't talk to my manager or like be nice, like they're mean, but it was actually fun. Like we did a lot.
That's great. So you can see from this that you're opening minds as well as opportunities. The last lesson I think was really important, and I emphasize professionals of color, but it's also women, other underrepresented groups in any institution or any company. If you can connect the students who don't feel like they're included with someone that looks like them and understands where they're coming from and can create that family feel. And it's not just them. You might have noticed that I'm a white guy standing up here. So it's all of us can do that for young people, but I definitely see that there's a drive that happens with people of color in the organization and say, wow, I don't want the people coming up after me to go through as hard a time as I did. I'm going to give back. So I noticed that being really important in every organization. So the call to action in some sense is for you to be superheroes yourself and to grow superheroes. How many people saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse? Oh, not that many hands, okay. How many people know who Peter Parker is? Okay. In that movie, the older Peter Parker gets to mentor a young Afro-Puerto Rican guy from New York who's discovering that he's the Spider-Man in this universe. He stumbles, awkward, he doesn't know his superpowers, but he helps him discover those superpowers, shows him how to use the ropes, so to speak. And you guys can do that by participating in these kind of internships. If you are in this area, want to do internships, please come talk to me and Ms. Hillary Jones, who has the camera rolling right there. Or if you want to sponsor us we have an annual celebration at Samsung this fall. We're trying to grow fast, like you see. That means we are growing our funding too, and we can really use sponsors who are interested in sponsoring this kind of work. So thank you very much. Thank you to Sasha Thompson and the whole AWS team.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Kahiga Tiaga. I don't know whether my mic's going to turn on, but I'm very pleased to be following up on Robert's remarks just because there's a clear continuum from youth to adult, which is the population that we serve. So my name is Kahiga Tiaga, founder and CEO of The Item. The Item stands for the Inclusive Technology and Entrepreneurship Movement. And we are providing essentially low-cost, high-impact career pathways to underrepresented communities into high-growth sectors. And at the moment, we're focusing on cloud computing. So just to give a little bit of background, because of the framework that I most likely will be using to convince the audience of why our model works, was trained as a lawyer before pivoting into technology. And some of the things that in my legal career, we were facing diversity issues as well. So in terms of being involved in those diversity efforts and applying them into our sector, certainly borrowing from those. Also certainly applying my sensibilities from my nonprofit experience, but also more recently in the last 4 years have not only founded the item, but got certified as a solution architect associate and worked in cloud computing so that I could be a real representation of, well, if somebody had no technology experience whatsoever, how would they pivot successfully into the sector so that you could actually speak intelligently about the subject, and then have formed a for-profit entity to be able to provide employment opportunities for our community. So the question that I asked the room, I refer to my legal background because if I was making an argument in front of a room, I would have my homework already done by centuries, right? There's case law that one relies on, but in a room like this, I'm not quite sure what is your motivation when you say you want diversity. So the question is, well, what would make you believe that underrepresented communities can be, in fact, onboarded into the tech sector and be considered contributors? At least that's our belief. So are you convinced by statistics? Are you a numbers person? And these are very sophomoric arguments, so don't hold me to them. But the question is, we know about technology as a growth sector, and we know about cloud computing specifically being an incredibly high growth area. So to the extent that we know technology is a larger part of our economy, and that there's going to be a pressing need to hire talent within that industry, to what extent are we prepared to consider diverse members being valuable contributors to make sure that we deal with the obvious demands? And then the question is, well, if you are thinking about it more from a sociological, anthropological perspective, you think, well, we know that it's coming, right? We're becoming a majority-minority country in real time. So if you're not convinced by just the state of technology, well, are you convinced about the larger state of America in that we are progressing towards a majority-minority country, and that a large swath of the country at the moment is dealing with poverty and unemployment issues and are not necessarily ready to leapfrog into the new tech sector? So are you motivated by that? Or are you motivated by brands, right? So brands that have said, well, we're no longer really that fascinated with degrees. We're much more interested in whether you can hit the ground running and how you can contribute to our environment. So PwC, IBM, they said, well, degrees are not it. We'll take somebody who has a certificate and the appropriate training into our environment, and we will train them up. EY, Intel, and Random House Penguin are doing that. Or are you convinced by anecdotal evidence? Are you convinced by someone, say, Dion, who came to us back in 2016, knew that she liked technology, but did not have an educational background to onboard? She had stopped her associate's program and was, sort of doing a hop around the Philadelphia technology scene in order to scale up. So she came to us. She did not have a CS degree. She did not have an associate's, but she's now working as a solution architect at Deloitte. What's the pathway? She came to the item. We focused on AWS as a skill. She became certified. And she continued her associate's program, but when she was made the offer from Deloitte, it was on the strength of the fact that she had a portfolio that reflected she had the appropriate skill set that would help them in an environment, but she was also AWS certified. Or are you, so Dion represents somebody who comes with no knowledge whatsoever, or are you a career pivoter and want to look for, while Talia, for example, is an artist who was enjoying a pretty prominent career, in that she had shown at the Louvre, but still it was a struggle to make a living as an artist. So she wanted to provide for her family and decided she wanted to pivot. How does someone who go from that thought into becoming a DevOps engineer at Elsevier? So that's the career changer. Or then we have somebody who had, been enjoying a career, but then had maybe not paid attention to the skill set and the zeitgeist of the technology community, and maybe got caught flat-footed. How do we get that person back into it? And we know that that's a pressing issue, because if you're that demographics person, you're also concerned about the aging of our population, about baby boomers as well. And to the extent that we are trying to make sure that they continue to contribute, how can we leverage those skills about COBOL and Fortran into purposeful careers? So we have Marva Lisa, who was very well trained, is now AWS certified as a solution architect associate, is helping us out in the instructor, and is also going to be helping us build some strategies. Or are you someone who needs technology as an extra lever in your career path, right? And what we found is that, and this I experienced as when I was an attorney. So there were certain amount of spots for black lawyers, but after that you had to, kind of compete, and that happens with a lot of professionals. So how do you distinguish yourself in the marketplace if you don't get in the first time with the first class? And so Fawaz has been leveraging his AWS certificate to be able to get in what one would consider the side door, but it's really the front door in the sense of where the economy is really going. So why did we create the item in the first place? Because Philadelphia is the largest poorest city in the country, and there are citizens living there in poverty and unemployment, and it disproportionately affects minorities. And as already discussed, we're providing low-cost, high-impact pathways. And so to those who are interested in the side of how we get somebody like a Dion from where she was to where she is right now, this is the pathway. We provide a very low pressure environment for people to see reflection of themselves in the technology career that they want to see, and we also educate during that process. But once you show interest, how do we get you in board? We first educate you, and we focus on AWS and train you to get your certificate. Now the cloud practitioner is there. People go for the cloud practitioner, but we usually insist on the associate level. But if you get educated, then you clearly want to get employed. You don't just want to sit on the couch, and so we facilitate employment as well. But as a longtime entrepreneur, I ran my own law firm, I know that entrepreneurship is one way not only to wealth build, but also to give your community an opportunity for employment. And so we hired a lot of minority lawyers who could have opted to work for large law firms, but work for us. And it's just, again, that reflection of working in an environment that looks like you, that you feel comfortable in, not only for the skill set, but also because of how it's built. So as I mentioned, I'm an AWS certified solution architect associate. I worked in a cloud computing company, and that was the most important experience in terms of how we're developing our students at the moment. We find for the most part that most people have aptitude. As long as you deliver the instruction in a cloud competent way, most people can get the certificate. That's not it. It's about after getting the certificate, how are they useful to you guys in the audience who are looking for either entry-level talent or other kinds of talent? We need to make sure that they have that practical exposure. And so what we have done is we've doubled down on making sure that our population is not only exposed to the culture of tech in terms of hackathons, but also a progressive exposure to employers, low pressure, where not only do you have conversations about how to build up your soft and technical skills, but ultimately with a reverse career fair where we bring employers who are specifically looking for the types of people that we're training so that it's not a low pressure, but it's kind of an A to A match in terms of need and demand. So that's us at the AWS Summit in New York. So part of what I've been asked to do is to say, well, how is AWS, the programs helping us? It's obvious that AWS Educate is one, and I am proud to say that I'm an AWS Cloud Educate Cloud Ambassador, which means that I help promote AWS platform as a vehicle through which, if you're an educational institution or educating people, you could certainly leverage. But for our entrepreneurship and enterprise, or part of our mission that is near and dear to my heart, we are focusing very much now on Cloud Start, because a lot of people know about tech and want to build solutions, but it's expensive, and they don't quite know about this cloud thing. And so the Cloud Start program is really helping us at least ease the pathway into technology for companies who are maybe building on various platforms to at least use. And these are all a portfolio of companies that are in our accelerator at the moment, all minority run, all technology companies, either in product development phase or in go-to-market. It's a little bit. So won't focus too much about our how we've proven our concept over the years, but rest assured that it's been through an association of state government partnerships, educational institutions, and people essentially, buying into our value proposition over the last 3 years. But really what it's been about, and I'm glad Robert really said this, it's about the partnerships. So I talked specifically about AWS Educate as being a key program that we rely on. But one of the things that I noticed when I was at in the cloud computing is that practical experience is huge. So if we were going to give our population practical experience, the way to do it, and by the way, the item's tagline is self-sufficiency through technology. How do we control that practical experience? We would love to take advantage of AWS. I believe they have a technical university program where they train recent graduates to work with AWS teams to get that practical experience that you employers would consider credible. But what we're doing on our own is creating a consulting company to deliver solutions. And so we're partnering with Nomadic Systems as a way to do that and to facilitate the staffing ability or displacement of our students. We're working at KG Tiger, a partner there. But what we find even more challenging in our mission is being able to convince people who had not previously considered technology an option to consider technology an option. And that's where on this side of the board, we work with a communications firm that specializes in working with underrepresented communities, training companies with soft skills, and ones that say, well, now that you're within the ecosystem, well, why don't we try to talk to you about how to get your associates and how to get your four-year degree if you so choose, so sort of providing a continuum. The most critical part about if you're in the room and you're thinking about building an organization or working with an organization like this, don't look for a quick fix. It can't possibly be a flash in the pan. So it's not microwave, you really have to bake the solution. And that's why I think in terms of the solution that we've provided, it has taken a lot of time. So I left, billable hour world and really have done a deep dive on this. And there's no way to provide a sustainable ecosystem without really baking it in. And so the first year, you just need to tell the population, hey, we're here for you. We're here to educate you about this newfangled thing, technology. And then you have to start pushing people through the classes in order to validate the program, right? You have to get the first certification. I was patient zero, I guess, to that extent. And then slowly begin to prove out that the model works. You notice that Robert goes all the way back to 2013 for those 525. It takes time and credibility to do it. And that's where we really rely on you to have faith that those organizations that are providing at least evidence in small but provable ways and repeatable ways take a bet on them, because they're really who are going to grow into the next Preschoolers of the world. And so we believe that not only should we be able to do the work in Philadelphia, but that we need to transport our model further afield. I worked in Mississippi last year on a development project, a major redevelopment of a traditionally African-American ward that was struggling with obviously poverty, unemployment issues, and just happened to be in the floodplain and in a hurricane zone. And so the person who was leading development asked me as part of the team, well, how do we bring the item in a similar ecosystem into it? And it was actually a challenge at the time. We took it out there, we tried to implement it, but there wasn't the human capital or really the knowledge to to build an organization like this. And that's where we've really taken time to say, well, how did we get here? And what were the pillars of credibility that were needed along the way in order for us now to be at the table with the city of Philadelphia and for Amazon to consider us a worthwhile partner? And so we believe that these are the steps, and we're reducing this into software and other ways to be able to transport it. So again, in terms of development opportunities, this is specific if you're thinking in a broader ways. Developers often drive the way workforce solutions and employment opportunities. So this just speaks to employment or economic development organizations that look to do this. But the truth is that for an ecosystem to decide, even if we do want to rely on government and business, ultimately it has to be somebody on the ground like Robert and myself who realizes that there's a certain amount of cultural competency that is involved. Otherwise, you can check out rentaminority.com in order to get your supply. It's a really great satire on the issue that we have to invest in the people and the organizations that are doing the work, or you could just ultimately hire one out. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi. So my name is Bridget Gray, and I am the Executive Vice President of National Program for Preschoolers. And so I always start out with the organization with the funny name. So Preschoolers is a 25-year-old tech training company that's headquartered out of the South Bronx. And we have actually trained our 10,000th student this month. So we're super excited about that. So one of the things that we talk about all the time are proven models. How do you know if an organization actually works? How do you know whether or not it's effective? And so Preschoolers has been an organization that has been here for 25 years. We're in 8 locations, and we train in everything from entry-level, mid-level, to advanced level skills. We believe that the nation's talent is right here. It's hidden in plain sight. But what we believe is that folks have not had the social capital that a lot of people have. They have not built their networks. And so we know that folks are motivated, they're intellectually curious, they're extremely smart, and so we want to be able to help folks get into the ranks of the growing tech sector. And so when we think in terms of us as an organization and our model, I'm going to go back for a second because there's a couple things about Preschoolers when we talk about a proven model that we have taken and we've done. So one is we are a data-driven organization. We believe strongly that data has to speak for what we do. And so we've been through 2 random control trials as an organization, and we're actually about to go through our 3rd trial. So in 25 years, that's 3 random control trials. We've been studied to death. But the thing about this one that's really important is it studies us outside of our headquarters, outside of the Bronx. And we're looking at 2 of our sites in this region, the DC region, as well as in Columbus, Ohio. And so it really is about making sure that what we see is proven. And so what these 2 previous RCTs did, the one in 2009, the one in 2016, both of them focused really heavily on proving that, one, we are able to move people from dependency on public benefits and to drive that down, to also take care and help people build a different quality of life, but also move people really effectively and quickly into the tech space. And so how do we do all of this when we think about it? So one of the things is we look at what is our impact as an organization, right? So our evidence shows that we are really good at training people. We're really good at putting people through graduation, and we're excellent at getting them to their first tech job. If you think in terms of where people come in at Preschoolers is typically at this $9,000 per year range. By the time they graduate from Preschoolers, we're somewhere in the mid-40s, low to mid-40s. That's where people graduate when they go into their first tech job. But if we think in terms of a couple of other things around just how do we make sure that this vision is met, there's a couple things around diversity that we've talked about internally. So the first thing is, as an organization, we absolutely have to make sure that we're walking the walk and talking the talk that we want employers to do. And so that focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion is extremely important to us as an organization. And so internally, what we did was we looked at ourselves, and were we an organization that was actually being inclusive by intention? And a couple things we did was we looked at our website, and we thought, oh, we have really deficit-based language on our website when we talk about our students. Let's switch that to asset-based language, because the reality is, in any of our training organizations, from what you've heard today, folks that come to us are no different from you in the audience. They're people that are looking for an opportunity, who have not built the social capital, and who need an opportunity for training and to be able to prove and demonstrate. The second thing we did was we really looked at how do we inform the employer community, because that's what Preschoolers is really known for, is our work with the employer community. And one of the things we did was launch these series of kind of national conversations around diverse by design. That's what it's called. It's through a partnership with ITSMF, JPMC. We built this national working group to really talk about how do we work with companies to help them understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion is extremely important as they think about hiring their talent pipeline. And so we've started out these series of conversations. We've now built in another layer, which is called a Jeffersonian dinner. And every year we have a Jeffersonian dinner to pull people around the table to have a real talk about DEI. And these are C-suite level folks who are decision makers that can really push the needle when it comes to hiring. And at the end of the day, they choose to come to Preschoolers because we have talent. We have talent that meets their bottom line needs. We had an opportunity to work with an organization called What Works Media. And one of the things that we did was we were part of a documentary. And this documentary gave an opportunity again to just prove that our model really, really works. It also gave an opportunity too to just kind of talk through, as Ron Haskins says, you know, we have to have the idea that we're going to link training to jobs that are available in the local economy. And that's what Preschoolers does. So one of the ways we do that is we work with employers to inform our curriculum. There is no curriculum that we build that does not have employer feedback and employer engagement. We try to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're not teaching to an empty market, but we're teaching to the growing market. And so thinking in terms of changing the face of tech, as I mentioned before, on average, our students come in at $9,000 per year, and they're somewhere in the low 40s to mid 40s by the time they graduate. And last year alone, our students contributed to $21.3 million back into the national economy. So partnerships. We all talked about partnerships and how super important partnerships are. And so our partners are everything from public-private sector to colleges and universities to community-based partners, as Robert mentioned earlier, and also with employers. And we know for a fact that there is no way to continue to do the work that we do without partners. And so in thinking about these partners through the employers, again, it is that one-to-one kind of bringing a partner in to not only work on curriculum, but to also work very closely with our students. So there's a ton of corporate engagement that happens. This gives partners the opportunity, employers the opportunity to come in and not think about our students as charity case or someone that's needy. It gives them the opportunity to come in and see, oh wow, this is the person that applied and I turned them down because they didn't have all the skills that I thought they needed to have. When we think in terms of colleges and universities, oftentimes we're pitted against each other as organizations that we are in competition. The reality is we're not. We're serving the same people. I cannot tell you the number of people that come into Preschoolers who do not have a post-secondary degree, but they have a god-awful amount of debt. And so the ability to be able to partner with colleges and universities creates another stream to make sure that we're moving people through tech jobs, but also helping them to lower their debt. Government and philanthropy. We work very well with city, state, and federal government, but also with the philanthropic community as well. And then the community-based organizations, as we mentioned before with Robert. Our approach is to collaborate, our approach is to teach, and our approach is to match. And those are the three things that we do with our partners. Collaborate, teach, match. So let's talk about collaboration. And we have the opportunity to collaborate with AWS. One of the things that we find really important to Preschoolers is to stay ahead of all of the tech changes, the changes in tech. And so in March of this year, Preschoolers, we joined forces with AWS, and we launched a 19-week system administrator training. And we're really excited about this training. And right now it's in our South Bronx location, and we will be expanding that nationally. But that gives us the opportunity to help students get those skills that they need in order to compete for jobs that normally they would not have the opportunity to compete with. And one of the things I didn't mention was that Preschoolers is an adult training organization. So we're 18 and over. Oftentimes people think we're training what they say kids, but we're adults, 18 and over. And so with this partnership with AWS, it's also being supported by BNY Mellon. So they are funding the partnership to make sure that none of the students have to incur any cost to continue through this training with AWS. So system administrators, 19-week course, and our students have the opportunity to go into jobs. And then I want to talk about another partnership very specific to a company, and this one is Tech Systems. So how many people have ever heard of Tech Systems before? Okay, great. So Tech Systems is a global tech hiring company. And they do placements with companies that are managed service provider. And one of the things that they have recently done, we've always partnered with them to be able to provide a talent pipeline. But one of the things that they've done recently is stepped up a little bit more. So Tech Systems is in the backyard, their headquarters is in the backyard of Baltimore. And as we know, Baltimore has a lot of things that are a bit challenging right now. And so when you start to think through how do you move people from poverty to self-sufficiency and what are those pieces you need to put in play for them, Tech Systems says, you know what, We're in their backyard. Why can't we jump in and do that? So what they did was they helped us launch a pilot training in the city of Baltimore. And we trained our first cohort last year. And I will tell you a story really quickly about one of our graduates in a second. But what they were looking for too, and if you know anything about tech systems, they are a company of the parent company Allegis. And they care deeply about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they really want to make sure they're opening up their doors to people regardless of what their backgrounds look like. And so they helped us run this pilot, and one of the students there was Zabaria. So Zabaria is amazing. Zabaria was self-identified as a wife, a mom of 4, with no marketable skills, according to Zabaria. But I say that if you're a wife and a mom of 4, you have tons of marketing skills. You just don't know it yet. And so Zabaria is from Baltimore City. Not born in Baltimore, but that is her home. And found that no matter what type of job she applied for, she was not able to get it. Zabaria joined Preschoolers, was very nervous, had no tech background, and didn't think anybody would want her. Came in, and then 15 weeks later, she earned not only 1 credential, but 2 industry credentials, was the first person that Tech Systems hired, and started her out in a salary of $45K per year. And I tell Zabaria's story because there is so much that Zabaria represents when you think in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a woman, a Muslim, all of those things that you see. When a person can go in and they can see the climate in this country has been so different for folks like Zabaria. So when a door can open up and she has no background or experience, I say thank you to Tech Systems, because they opened up their door and they gave Zabaria the opportunity to do that. And so now she went from being what she calls the least sought after to the most sought after team member. And so I wrap it up by thinking in terms of Preschoolers is an organization that really believes heavily in DEI, and really believes heavily in how do you connect people to folks that are diverse. 90% of our students are of color. We're at about less than 30% women, and our goal is to move that to 50% women. And so when you think about the work that we've done, we've taken an internal look. How many organizations take the step back as a nonprofit to say, let me take a look at ourselves. And our goal was to look at ourselves to make sure that we're doing what we need to. But the biggest thing is to be able to sit down and have conversations with employers to help them understand why it's important to hire diverse teams, why it's absolutely important to make sure that they see our students as a successful talent pipeline, not as a charity, not as someone that does not have anything of value to offer, but to see them as no different than they see someone else. So that is my time. I really appreciate you listening, and thank you so much.